Members, good morning. Welcome to the meeting. It's already the appointed time and we formed a quorum. May I call the meeting to order? The first thing on the agenda is information papers issued since the last meeting. Since our last meeting dated the 22nd of May, no information paper has been issued. Next, items for discussion at our next meeting. The next regular meeting is scheduled for the 10th of July 2023 at 2:30 p.m. We have got two suggestions from the administration for discussion. The first is proposed enhancements to the aircraft leasing preferential tax regime, and second, update on the development of the three runway system at the Hong Kong International Airport. Members, do you have any comments on the two proposals? All right, that will be our agenda for the next meeting. The third item is the development of Hong Kong's logistics industry. We have got paper CB4 620/2023 and bracket 03. Let us invite the administration to join us now. And members, if you intend to speak on this item, please press the button. In accordance with ROP 83A, if you have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in any of the discussion items today, please declare the nature of the interest involved before you speak. All right. Today we have Ms. Amy Chen, Acting Deputy Secretary for Transport and Logistics, and Ms. Joanne Ju, Principal Assistant Secretary for Transport and Logistics from the T&L Bureau. Welcome. Administration, please introduce your paper to us. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'd like to brief members on the latest progress of our work in relation to the formation of an action plan on modern logistics development of Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong is an international aviation hub as well as an international shipping center. We are an important logistics hub in Asia. At the 14th five-year plan, and also the GBA plan, we've been affirmed by the central authorities to be an international aviation hub and international shipping center. And we should develop high-value air cargo logistics and high-value added maritime services in Hong Kong. We'll work together with the logistics industry to leverage our traditional strengths of the sector to further enhance our competitive edge so that we can continue to develop our logistics industry and grasp the opportunities brought about by our national and regional development. Now, we mentioned in the 2022 policy address that we're going to formulate an action plan with short, medium, and long-term development strategies so that Hong Kong can develop into a modern, high-value added and smart logistics hub in Asia, so that we can enable efficient flow of goods between Hong Kong and the rest of the region, as well as promoting the sustainable development of the logistics industry. In the past few months, we've consulted the Hong Kong Logistics Development Council and stakeholders of the industry to receive their views on the advantages of and as well as challenges associated with the industry, as well as the strategic areas to focus in the action plan. Now, we have formulated 4 major areas for further formulation of the action plan to promote the development of our modern logistics industry. Our plan is to publish the action plan within this year. And I'll give the floor to my colleague, Ms. Joanne Chu, to give you a PowerPoint presentation, and we welcome questions from members afterwards. Chair and members of the panel, good morning. Now we would like to brief you on the progress of our work in formulating the action plan. As said by the Acting Deputy Secretary in the government's central government's 14th five-year plan, and also the 20th National People Congress report, we should develop Hong Kong's logistics industry. And in formulating the action plan, we have to know our positioning as well our role. So we want to make Hong Kong an outstanding logistics hub. And we would like to use our strengths in making in e-commerce so that Hong Kong can be a modern, value-added, and smart logistics hub in Asia. In the past few months, we have been discussing with the Hong Kong Logistics Development Council and also stakeholders of the trade. We have to analyze our strengths first. So we have done a SWOT analysis. To put it simply, now as we all know, Hong Kong has a very advantageous geographical position. We have strengths in intermodal transport network, and we have expertise in dealing with time and temperature sensitive products. We have efficient customs clearance. So we do have advantages in dealing with high value goods, which is time and temperature sensitive. Just like other industries, we face constraints in terms of land supply and also labor supply. The operating cost in Hong Kong is also high, and to a certain extent, this would affect our competitiveness. Compared with the mainland and places like Singapore, we are not using enough technology. This is particularly the case for small and medium-sized operators. There is room for improvement in this regard. Logistics is an external-oriented economic activity, so it's vulnerable to geopolitical tensions and the external economic environment. And competition from neighboring places also bring challenges. Of course, opportunities will come with challenges. We have the support of the central government. There is the GBA development and Belt and Road initiatives. These have brought us great opportunities. Within Asia, we've also got RCEP. This can promote free trade within the region. With trade, there will be business opportunities for logistics. And lastly, as I said, in dealing with e-commerce goods, we have a competitive edge because we are very efficient. The rapid development of e-commerce and also the demand for high-value goods in GBA mean that there will be new opportunities for us. Now, we have already analyzed our strengths and challenges and opportunities. We've come up with 4 major areas for enhancement. Hopefully, we can have policies in these 4 areas to help the industry to cope with challenges and to consolidate our strength and further enhance our competitiveness. As mentioned in the paper, we need to enhance supply of logistics land, and secondly, in terms of software, we need to boost manpower supply and training. And as I said, we need trading activities, so we need to develop new business opportunities. And internally, we should also boost cross-sectoral coordination. And now I will like to brief the panel on what we're going to do in each area. First, on land supply, the government is committed to identifying suitable land for developing multi-story modern logistics facilities. So in our action plan, we will consider policy directions so that in the short, medium, and long term, we can provide a stable supply of land for the sector. As the industry has reflected to us, land is expensive in Hong Kong. We want to provide multi-story logistics facilities for better use of our land resources, as said by the industry. While such facilities are good, the rental will be higher than brownfield sites, and they are not really affordable to small and medium-sized enterprises. We'll consider measures in the plan to provide affordable land for our logistics industry. Our supply currently mainly focus in Kwai Chung. In the long run, in new development areas such as the Northern Metropolis, we have reserved land for developing logistics. The sites will be bigger there, and there is room for us to see whether new development areas can be turned into logistics circle for dedicated sector to better support the development of the industry, so much so for land supply. Now, when we have the necessary hardware, we need to boost our software. Manpower is very important. It's difficult to recruit people, young people in particular, because the public has the feeling that logistics involve manual labor and movement of goods, and it's hard to attract young people to join the industry. So we are going to formulate measures to help the sector to boost a professional image, to attract more young people to join the sector. These aside, now our target is to move towards high value added development. So on-the-job training is most important. Our practitioners need to know the operation of the of a traditional practice, but they need to know, learn about the operation of things like the cold chain. And then we need new business opportunities. In our SWOT analysis, we are of the view that SMEs are not applying technology sufficiently. So we will see how we can make good use of government resources to assist the sector to apply new technology so as to reduce the demand for manpower in some steps. All right, and then we need to develop business opportunities. We rely on trading activities to generate demand for logistics services. So we will enhance our collaboration with mainland cities of the GBA, and externally we need to explore new markets covering ASEAN countries and the Middle East and other new emerging markets. We also want to enhance publicity to attract more mainland or overseas companies to use Hong Kong's logistics services and even set up their regional distribution centers in Hong Kong. So that's about developing new opportunities. All right, we have upgraded our hardware and software. We need cross-sectoral coordination as well. The development of the industry is affected by other policies such as development of green industry and sharing of data and upgrading of technology. So this industry doesn't develop on its own. It is interrelated with other industries. So we are going to explore a suitable mechanism to strengthen the cross-sectoral coordination and collaboration within the government so as to provide more business-friendly environment for our sector. So these 4 areas are the outcome of our consultation with the trade. As regards the timeline, as set by the Deputy Secretary, after we've consulted the panel today, we will further enhance our plan. Our plan is to publish the action plan within this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me read out the list of members. Dr. Chow Man Kwong, Mr. Robert Lee, Mr. Chan Siu Hong, Mr. Jeffrey Lam, Dr. So Chang Ming, Mr. Jimmy Ng, Mr. Frankie Yik, Ms. Eunice Yung, Mr. Andrew Lam, and Mr. Michael Lok. Members will speak in this order, and I think a couple of members may come down in due course. Let's start with 3-minute speaking time limit. If we have time, I will allow for another round. Let's kick off with Dr. Chow Man Kwong. Thank you. The logistics industry is one of the 4 major economic pillars in Hong Kong, and it is a major contributor to the GDP. It is a very important industry. As we resume normalcy, we want to ensure that our industries are operating with efficiency. We must make good use of the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai bridge because I think it is a waste. We spent $12 billion on the bridge, and in this tripartite development, we also showed the commitment of several $billion. The problem is there is little people or vehicular flow across the bridge. And if we are to develop ourselves into an international premier logistics center targeting e-commerce and high-value products, we need to give it a thought. The Central Shenzhen Pass will be commissioned soon. We should give priority to the flow of goods and allow co-location arrangements for the clearance of goods. We have co-location arrangements for passengers clearance. The Hong Kong SAR government is one of the parties in this mechanism. I think we should put forward a proposal to the central authorities to implement co-location of customs clearance for goods so that we will be able to attract the operators in the western side of Pearl River to use our facilities. Now, about the cold chain management in China, this industry has a market size of 420 billion, and it will go up to 920 billion renminbi in the future. Now, we should set common standards for use in the Greater Bay Area to facilitate the flow of goods, and measures should be put in place when these goods arrive in Hong Kong to facilitate the development of the logistics industry. Ms. Chan, I thank Dr. Chow for his comments. Well, I think this Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge is the project invested by the three governments. So we should, of course, make good use of the bridge. This will help facilitate the different services. Now, in terms of policy, how do we use the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge for accessing the airport for cargo freight? We need to have a discussion among the three governments. I thank Dr. Chow for his comments. We'll go back and relay this view to the relevant bureaus and departments for follow-up. Dr. Chow also mentioned the increase in scale of the cold chain management sector in the country. We will, of course, have discussion with the central authorities. This is also one of our highlights. Mr. Robert Lee, the logistics sector will focus on four major areas. I would like to focus on manpower, among land, business opportunities, manpower, and cross-sectoral coordination. I think there is a misconception among young people that the logistics industry is labor-intensive and low in value. And recently, when I discussed with the practitioners in the industry, I understand there are initiatives relating to upgrading and transformation, ESG, and relevant I&T training. My question for the administration is whether the administration has approached tertiary students, university students, and telling them more about the development of the industry. I also attended recent job fairs, and I understand that there is a mismatch between the education system and the skill sets needed in the market. And we also hear about negative news reporting, such as geopolitical tensions and the external headwinds affecting the development of the sector. So the administration should make sure that job opportunities will be provided to young people, be it students in local universities or students in the mainland or the rest of the world. In terms of enhancing manpower training for the logistics industry, manpower is our capital. We also support relevant training and accreditation courses on cold chain management so that we can enhance our competitive edge on cold chain management such as fresh produce and pharmaceutical products, as well as grasping opportunities presented by e-commerce. We also support the provision of internship or summer placement opportunities for young people to know more about the industry. In the budget 2023-24, the government announced that 200 million Hong Kong dollars will be injected to the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund so that recurrent funding can be provided to the relevant training institutions to hold more training courses and activities so as to provide more internship and placement opportunities to young people. And we also collaborate with tertiary institutions and professional organizations so as to help rebrand and upgrade the industry's image and to attract more young people to join the industry and for us to grasp the opportunities presented in developing Hong Kong into an international premier logistics center. Mr. Chan Siu-Hong, the logistics industry is one of the 4 key economic pillars, accounting for about 1/5 or 6.2% of Hong Kong's GDP. It plays a pivotal role in our economy. And in order to give play to our position as an international aviation hub and a regional logistics hub, we need to devise strategies. As set out in the paper, I look forward to this action plan on modern logistics development, which will contain measures to facilitate the industry's development. Like the Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, said, there is no time to wait. We must take action now. Now, for the logistics industry, I see that there are 4 major areas for enhancement, such as the supply of affordable logistics land, manpower supply and training, new business opportunities, cross-sectoral coordination, as well as the SWOT analysis presented by the administration. I have a clear picture now. But basically, these are pain points which the industry is fully aware of. This paper gives a summary of these problems, but the point is, Chairman, it's not about identifying problems but solving them. We're all anxious, the industry included. So I hope that more specific measures can be put in place to solve problems. It's been a year since the delivery of the policy address by the Chief Executive. Having consulted the logistics industry and sought their feedback, I'm sorry to say that this paper is really thin. It may not be fair to the administration. We're all anxious in solving problems together. In the interest of time, Chairman, I have a question. And I'll just focus on this question and I will reflect my other views to you on other occasions. Now, I'd like to focus on additional sites for the logistics industry. I read from the paper that additional land will be set aside in the Northern Metropolis and NDAs for the development. 61 hectares or 11 hectares of land have been reserved in the Hung Shui Kiu and the relevant areas in Yuen Long. Do you mean by additional land here that more land will be reserved apart from what have been announced so that we have a clearer idea? And then one possible direction is to develop specific logistics clusters for dedicated logistics operations in different NDAs. I'm sorry, may I know more about the expression dedicated logistics operations? Ms. Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your comments. As set out in my opening remarks in the paper, within this year, we will announce the action plan. Now, we are consulting the panel today. We have consulted the industry and also the Hong Kong Logistics Development Council and the industry stakeholders before coming up with the 4 major areas for enhancement. We'd like to have members' views today so that we can refine our proposal and announce the action plan within this year. On the point of additional land mentioned by Mr. Chan, at this moment we look for logistics sites in Kwai Chung area and Kwai Chung area. For additional land, we mean that different sites will be provided such as in the Northern Metropolis and the NDAs, apart from the sites in Kwai Chung. Studies will have to be conducted for us to consider the development parameters and planning matters so that we can develop specific logistics clusters and create synergy among the operators so as to enhance efficiency. Are you able to answer Mr. Chan's question about this expression, additional land? Exactly how many hectares of additional land are you talking about? I'll defer to my colleague, Ms. Joanne Zhu, to take your question. Now, for additional land, we're talking about sites apart from the Kwai Chung container terminals. In fact, we're talking about sites as announced by the Development Bureau. 37 hectares in Hong Shui Kiu and 24 hectares for developing multi-story modern logistics facilities. So by additional land, you're talking about the sites already announced, not exactly anything in addition of these sites. So what's the point of consulting us? Because you could have asked members for support so that you can strive for more land from the Development Bureau in the Northern Metropolis. However, you need to tell us the specifics such as how many multi-story modern logistics buildings will be provided, so on and so forth, whether the demand can be met. Because you're talking about collaboration with the Greater Bay Area and the development of smart logistics. We're not talking about the existing approach to developing the logistics industry now. All right, your comment is noted. Let's see if we have time for another round for you. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Manpower is key to the development of logistics industry, especially in the face of keen competition from neighboring cities. We need to have professionals underpinning the high-end and high-value-added logistics services. The 2023-24 budget announced that 200 million Hong Kong dollars will be injected to the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund so as to provide more on-the-job logistics training for practitioners and internship opportunities for young people. Now we have approved funding. My question for the administration is on the relevant training initiatives as mentioned. Now we are competing for manpower across different industries. It is not easy to attract new blood to join the logistics industry. In fact, the industry is already facing this serious problem of succession gaps. After training young people, they leave the industry and the training process will need to start afresh. Many employers are frustrated. They are unable to attract young people to join them. Now, just now the administration said that if we have sufficient manpower, we can grasp new business opportunities. Now, I can tell you the truth is after we train young people, they leave the industry. We need to be able to attract talents so that the gap can be plugged immediately. If we have incoming talents, we will be able to give a boost to this and other industries in grasping business opportunities. Don't just tell us that there will be training. It takes time to groom talents. Can we take a two-pronged approach? You don't need to recite from your paper. Just answer my question.
Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your suggestion to import talent to grasp the business opportunities. What I can say is I heard your suggestion. Do you agree with me? Now, I'm not able to give you a reply today, but do you agree with me? I cannot provide an answer at this point. I apologize. And what plans do you have for manpower training in 6 months, from 9 months? What sort of talent are you going to provide to grasp business opportunities? As mentioned, the Financial Secretary has earmarked another $200 million to the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund. We have various measures how to attract young people. We're grateful to the view of the industry as well as the Logistics Council. Now, it's important to let young people learn about the operation of the industry. So we should start to attract them when they're young to enhance their understanding of the operation of the industry. As regards manpower retention, we provide on-the-job training so that we can help young people to stay in the trade after joining it so that they can see a future and they will know that logistics is not a local industry. It can be very internationalized. We should encourage the application of technology in modern logistics companies. They can accept interns from universities so that these students are willing to stay and serve in these companies upon graduation. We're not talking about traditional logistics companies, but those that adopt smart technology and so we have to let people know that the logistics industry is transforming and the work nature is not boring and very old-fashioned as most people think in the past. Dr. So Chang-Wing, so you just told us the constraints in the development of the industry. The first is lack of land supply. Second, not enough technology application. And third, you have manpower shortage. These are really major constraints. This will drive up the operating costs. You want Hong Kong to develop into a logistics hub. Now, if the efficiency is low and operating cost is high, how will people want to develop in Hong Kong? Mr. Chairman Kwong asked, how come you did not use the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge and also the new land border crossings to enhance collaboration with other cities of the GBA? The reply from the administration was the customs authorities of 3 places would be involved. Of course, this is a known fact. The question is how you can resolve this problem. We don't have enough land, driving up operating costs, and we should make use of land in the mainland cities of the GBA. There they have abundant supply of land and low cost. They have sufficient manpower, affordable manpower. When in Hong Kong we cannot address or resolve these 2 problems, we don't have enough manpower and labor cost is high. You have to make a breakthrough here. And I'd like to know what specific measures do you have? Last year, there was a memorandum of understanding signed with Zhuhai Airport, and since then we have heard no more of the development. I'd like to know whether the government has followed up on specific measures on cooperation with Zhuhai. I'm sure this can help to lower costs and create synergy in driving down costs. I'd like to know the progress. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. So, for your questions. You are worried that we're not applying technology sufficiently. Perhaps my colleague can give you more information on how we encourage the logistics industry to apply more technology. Thank you, Mr. So, for your question. Now, I didn't ask about the application of technology, rather our collaboration with GBA in the supply of land and labor. Please address my questions directly. Thank you. enhance the use of the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge is also the objective of the Hong Kong SAR. We have been following up with the Zhuhai government on collaboration in logistics services. Now, we should not just consider Hong Kong alone. We should look at synergies and also collaboration with the whole GBA. The Secretary for Transport and Logistics led members of the Logistics Development Council to a duty visit in Zhuhai a few months ago. Our common goal is to maximize the bridge to promote flow of cargo and people. Yes, costs in Zhuhai are lower, and in Zhuhai they have logistics park, and they have came to Hong Kong to brief us on the development, and then we visited their logistics part as well. The purpose is to leverage the advantages of Hong Kong and Zhuhai and to use the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge to boost logistics in the west of Guangdong. Of course, Hong Kong International Airport is cooperating with the Zhuhai Airport. We're not just talking about flow of people and cargo. And for customs clearance, our own customs and excise department have very close liaison with their counterpart. Now, recently, in the recent few days, more fresh produce can be imported to Hong Kong through the bridge. We want to enhance collaboration with Zhuhai to promote the development of the industry. We will continue to step up our efforts, and we will give an account of our work to members later. Thank you. Mr. Jimmy. Yes, as we all know, all sectors in Hong Kong face a manpower crunch, and the logistics industry is no exception. Importation of labor is an immediate solution, and another one is the use of technology. Now, for the use of technology, we have pilot scheme for promoting the use of technology. I'd like to know whether it will become a regular scheme and whether the amount of subsidy can be enhanced. We have 8,000 workers under the supplementary labor importation scheme for the transport industry, but the quota allocated to logistics is limited. According to a report, for frontline operators and for the logistics industry, hiring is difficult and turnover is high. So when the administration reviews the supplementary labor importation scheme, I suggest that we would include workers for the aviation sector into the scheme. Thank you. Thank you. We note member suggestions. That is, we should import labor for this sector to support their operation. We heard this view and we will consider that. Perhaps Ms. Zhu can comment on that. And for the TPLSP, the pilot subsidy scheme for third-party logistics services providers. Well, it was launched in 2020. Let me report to you the progress. As at mid-June this year, the pilot scheme has subsidized 203 projects involving $120,000 million, benefiting 170 companies. The pilot scheme has been useful to the industry. We're studying how we can further enhance the scheme. Each company can receive up to 1 million of subsidy with ratio of 1.1 increased to 1 to 2. That is, the government can spend $2 million for every $1 million spent by the company. The Hong Kong Productivity Council is responsible for operating the pilot scheme. And there is also an advisory committee for the pilot subsidy scheme. We'll see what sort of support can be provided to encourage small and medium enterprises to make use of the subsidy. They need more support. They need our hands-on support to know what kind of technology is suitable for them. And we can even provide subsidies for the software aspect. They can also rent such technology. In the long run, I hope they can adopt more technology, and it's also our intention to see whether the scheme can be regularized. Thank you. Mr. Frankie Yik. If we look at the background of the paper, the government sounds contradictory. On the one hand, we say that logistics and also trading accounts for 20% of our GDP, providing 610,000 jobs, and logistics sector alone account for 6.2% of our GDP, but we've never had a proper policy for this sector. Our logistics companies are operating in different brownfield sites because we do not have a proper policy. And now the government is also resuming brownfield sites for housing and for INT development. The government keeps saying that they have multi-story factory-like buildings for the logistics industry, but that doesn't suit the operation of all companies. I'm afraid you won't provide enough land to make up for the 8,000 odd hectare brownfield sites you are going to resume. So in the long run, the logistics industry will be killed. And some of the members mentioned manpower resources. So can we set up a maritime and aviation authority or board? Now, if we do not have enough policies, how can we secure enough resources for this sector? You have changed the name of the bureau to Transport and Logistics Bureau. We do not have a logistics department, and AMIA has only got a few officers to support her. If the industry is contributing 6% of our GDP, how can you allow it to operate in this way? Now, the government like to talk about high-value air cargo logistics. Now, we have modern and also traditional logistics, but then for a cargo, we have high-value and low-value air cargo. We do have potential for developing a high-value added cold chain logistics industry, but we cannot ignore the conventional cargoes such as tissue rolls. Can we afford to have no tissue rolls? So they may not be high-value goods, but it's also important. The government like to talk about modern logistics part, and yet the Policy Bureau is only using the term logistics clusters. It dare not use the term logistics park. Now, I'm very worried about the future development of this sector, and we should leverage our relations with the mainland, but that is something for the long run. The government should really consider setting up a logistics department or a maritime and aviation authority so that work to support this sector can be sustained. Otherwise, we will just be talk shop. Thank you. Sustained and regular policies. As said, we are going to publish an action plan for the sector within this year. With input from members today, we will refine our action plan and hopefully it can be announced within this year. As mentioned by Mr. Yik, we are now the Logistics and Transport Bureau. We are very confident that our logistics industry can continue to flourish. Now, high value and high end logistics industry. Now, Hong Kong is an entry port trade, or we are well positioned to engage in international trading, and a lot of goods is coming through Hong Kong. I thank Mr. Yik for this submission. Some of the recommendations are not just for my department. It is for another department of my bureau. We should start cross-sectoral collaboration, and the views will be relayed to my team, another team. Hopefully, we can better address the needs of the sector. Thank you.
Monsieur Nguyen, Chairman, I think we cannot just take a broad brush and suggest there is insufficient land. How many hectares of land will be provided to the logistics industry by the government for this development of a modern logistics industry? We haven't heard a concrete answer from the government. Having consulted the industry for a few months, the government still is unable to answer this question. I'm baffled. I visited the briefing session of a modern logistics company. I sought an understanding of their challenges, and I also sought advice from them. They have very strong views on the government policies. For example, there is not a land category dedicated to logistics sites, and even if the government resumes Chotong land, the statutory procedures take 5 or 6 years, not to mention the actual construction of the logistics park. It will take at least a decade for it to be formed. So at this point, where do we find the indicators or the blueprint? It should be dealt with by the government itself. The Lands Department does not have a standard rates for resuming land, a rate of compensation. They're unable to provide evaluation, whether it's $2,000 per square meters. And as mentioned by the other member, for the clearance of the multi-story logistics buildings, you need at least 6 meters. So there are lots of hurdles you fail to go through policy-wise. And you never talk about the lack of coordination among government departments, the interfacing of government policies. Instead, the paper refers to land and manpower. I don't think you are facing the music. Now, before publishing this blueprint or action plan before the end of the year, what else can we discuss? Because I am frustrated. Having discussed the matter for a few months, you don't understand what the problem actually is. When it comes to land and planning matters relating to the Lands Department or the Buildings Department, this is really new to me. No, not exactly. Well, of the 4 major areas for enhancement, one major area is cross-sectoral collaboration. I thank Ms. Yong for her comments. We'll go back and give it a thought. Now, I think this answer leaves much more to be desired. I feel somewhat antagonized. Well, it's an occasion for us to share views and for the administration to answer questions. Let me also supplement. In the vicinity of Kwai Chung, we have been striving for more logistics sites suitable for multi-story modern logistics facilities. We have been listening to the sector's views. I thank Ms. Yong anyway for her comment. Mr. Andrew Lam. Well, I was going to start by saying that this action plan acknowledges the problems that we're aware of relating to the logistics industry. But just now, the administration said that it's actually the first time they heard about issues relating to the buildings department, the building regulations. And I am aghast if the administration has such an insufficient understanding of the real issue. I don't think we'll have a fruitful discussion here. Now, on logistics sites, as of now, many people are still supporting that priority should be given to brownfield sites. Regardless of the diction, be it high value goods, high value added services, if we take a longer horizon from 1980s to now, and the use of sites in the new territories, we need to plan for the transition. We need to have an idea about the demand for logistics sites. In fact, we are discussing at the development panel meeting the commence or commissioning of multi-story modern logistics buildings. So having heard all the views from the sectors, you should be able to tell us more about the nitty-gritty. Otherwise, by the time tendering begins for the multi-story buildings, how do we gauge the effectiveness? Because as it turns out, there is a lack of policy support from either bureau. The next point is on e-commerce. This is a highlight. And in your paper, I see this sentence relating to e-commerce. Which policy bureau is in charge of e-commerce? I have no idea so far. E-commerce is a cross-disciplinary, cross-sectoral matter. I fully understand that. But will the Transport and Logistics Bureau or the Commerce or Economic Development Bureau play the role as a coordinator? Thank you for the comments. Now, the Transport and Logistics Bureau is responsible for the demand arising from e-commerce, but perhaps I'll defer to my colleague Ms. Joanne Ju to tell you more about the latest developments and the dovetailing with the Development Bureau about the Northern Metropolis. Yes, I'd like to supplement this answer. In terms of multi-story logistics buildings, we are ironing out details with the Lands Department, the Buildings Department in terms of land leases for the commissioning of multi-story logistics buildings. We understand there are special requirements relating to, say, floor clearance and also other requirements. That, for example, there has to be a ramp for heavy vehicles and lorries, and special requirement relating to electricity. So in terms of land leases, we are ironing out the details for the purpose of supporting the logistics industry. As for future development in the Northern Metropolis, where the sites will be earmarked for the logistics industry, now frankly, we are only approving sites originally used for port and backup uses in Kuai-Ching area. In the future, however, we will be able to earmark more sites in the Northern Metropolis to support the logistics industry. And there should be supporting facilities. For example, cold chain management. That means we need to have good electricity infrastructure. And for storage, the multi-story buildings will need to have larger clearance. So we're looking at comprehensive planning in the future so that be it multi-story logistics facilities and other facilities, we will be able to meet the future needs of the modern logistics industry. Mr. Michael Look. All the talk about smart logistics, high value-added logistics services, I find a discrepancy between the answers given by the two government officials here. Now, one of them talked about not having constraints And then the other officials seemed to be in the know. She then supplemented the answer by citing some government information. It shows that the government is aware of the situation as well. But you should not just stop at having this knowledge. You should give us a timetable as to how and when improvements will be made. The multi-story buildings will be built in Hung Shui Kiu. But in terms of the legislation, you are going by the existing legislation, and then you won't be able to meet the demand, say, in terms of clearance of the buildings. And I've been in touch with the operators of warehouses and logistics companies. They understand that sooner or later land will be resumed, but they are not given a clear timetable. Of course, I understand these matters may be confidential. Is it possible, however, for the relevant landowners to know when land resumption will take place so that they have an idea how long their tenancy will last and whether they should continue to make investment? In a case I recently came across, the landowner would like to work with the tenant to build a modern smart logistics facility. They submitted applications with the government, and yet just weeks before that, the government announced that public housing development will take place in the area. In a way, there is policy uncertainty, and this is a deterrent for investors. So my question is, how do you make sure that there is a greater degree of certainty for investors and for the industry? And about the $200 million injection into the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, can you provide more information on the proposed training? Number of comments. Please focus on the questions put. I'm sorry, because I have just taken up this post for a short time, but we work as a team, and I'm sure my colleague will supplement my answer if necessary. And I will defer to Ms. Joanne Ju to take your question to see whether we can say more on the Northern Metropolis development. In short, land resumption comes under the Development Bureau. Meanwhile, we understand that it is important to provide certainty for the industry so that they have a better idea of how many logistics sites are available, and then they can plan accordingly. We want to enhance transparency on the supply of logistics land to facilitate the industry's planning. As for the $200 million injection into the MATF, internally, we are devising guidelines on the application procedures, and we will be consulting the sector. Our goal is that in the second half of this year, this fund will be rolled out for application by the industry. Our target is training institutions and industry organizations so as to step up training. They will benefit from the injection. Now, having consulted the sector, we will roll out this funding scheme in the second half of this year. Mr. Chen Yong. I agree with the directions set out here. That is to integrate into the Greater Bay Area to create synergy. Say the CE that led a delegation to visit the Dongguan Logistics Park, which also collaborates with the Hong Kong International Airport. So there is future in this. The second point is we have, say, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and we want to enhance the its use at different levels. We need to provide jobs for different sectors. Now, they are rolling out a facilitation measure to facilitate the flow of people, and our initiative will not commence until the 1st of July. We're that lagging behind. So in the short term, I think we need to work harder to yield results. The second point is of course, we need to work on bolstering our status as an international or regional logistics hub. But about integrating with the Greater Bay Area, we need to dovetail with the national strategy. We should make good use of our strengths in the Greater Bay Area so that we see progress in the short, medium, and long term. I think you will get the support of the people.
Thank you. DS. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your views. We will further study your proposals and try to enhance what we're doing. And what about the flow of people and goods through the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge? I'm not mentioning the flow of capital yet. So when can you achieve the target of 100,000 vehicle trips? Now, if passenger and goods vehicles can achieve the target of 100,000 trips within July, then we're seeing some effect. So can you tell us when you can achieve this target? Thank you. I don't have such information now. I will provide it later. All right. 3 members are waiting to speak. I have to draw a line. Okay. Next, Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chair. The development of our logistics industry faces great challenges. We need the supporting facilities. We need manpower. We need collaboration with cities of the GBA. All these warrant in-depth study by the administration. Here comes my 2 questions. First, the action plan for the development of the industry, can it be published by early next year? I'm concerned about the future of the Kwai Chung container terminal. Do we have any plan for that? And what about the development of e-commerce logistics? Do we have e-commerce logistics park planned to be provided in the northern metropolis? And the government wants to encourage automation, such as automation of our container terminals. We have yet to see real measures. Without government policy and resource support, it's not easy for operators to increase the automation of their operation, given that fees and charges are declining. Our industry is aging rapidly, and therefore we must have smart logistics as soon as possible. I'd like to ask whether there are any concrete plans for the government to do that. Thank you. DS? I will defer to my colleague on the promotion of smart logistics solutions. First, the timetable. Our target is to announce the action plan within this year. And secondly, cross-boundary e-commerce logistics park. We want to use land there for developing specific logistics clusters. As for cross-boundary e-commerce, we have a competitive edge here, and we will grasp these opportunities. And we've also got the pilot subsidy scheme for third-party logistics service providers. Subsidies will be available for companies to use automation. This can also boost our operation. We are developing a smart port, and we have very close communication with operators to see how we can assist them to use a modern technology. Let me supplement. We are now following up with the measures announced by the FS in his budget. And we've also set up a dedicated working group so that together with the industry, we can announce an action plan by the end of this year. Are you going to announce an action plan? Yes, that will be done within this year. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you. Of course, we need an action plan, and we should press ahead with it. However, I have got some suggestions. Members mentioned this point, and I have communicated with stakeholders of the sector. Now, in the mainland, in the NT, such as Hongshui-Q and Yunnan South, we have 600 hectares of land that can be released from brownfield sites for housing development. But there are also outdoor brownfield sites. They have heavy machinery and cranes, lifting devices, etc. They need to store their heavy-duty equipment and machinery there. And there are also other needs. I just want to say that I understand that the administration wants to use multi-story facilities to serve the needs of brownfield site operators. I doubt whether you are able to cater for all of them. I mentioned heavy-duty machinery and cranes, etc. They need place to store these facilities. And I'm sure, Chairman, you know what I'm saying because you have been in contact with the sector as well. So I'd like to ask whether you should include in your action plan the following. You cannot just rely on multi-story modern logistics facilities. We always have a need for outdoor sites. The question is where they should be located. Secondly, multi-story facilities. The clearance is one thing, and some operators are telling us that they have heavy-duty vehicles. The loading capacity of the building, well, they need heavy beams and pillars that will take up floor space. So these multi-story buildings are not really productive and cost-effective, and that's why they are asking for outdoor operating space. I'm worried whether multi-story buildings will be acceptable to the industry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for your views. Resumption of brownfield sites would affect the operators thereon, and the Development Bureau will address their needs. Mr. Chow mentioned the queries of operators when it comes to multi-story logistics building. Now, for operations that cannot operate on the upper stories will use space on the lower stories. We have to identify land for different users in Hong Kong. And so developing multi-story logistics facilities is our direction. Having said so, we are consulting the sector. We will look at the development parameter, the conditions in the lease, etc., in developing these multi-story buildings. We are more than happy to receive views from the sector. Mr. Yu Pek Leung, thank you, Chair. The paper is on the progress of the action plan on modern logistics development. Of course, I understand that the action plan will be an outline for further development, and yet the paper is a bit too brief. We've only got 4 major areas for enhancement. I'd like to comment on cross-sectoral coordination in particular. Members have talked about the various constraints in the development of the sector, and we look forward to improvement measures from the administration. The problem with the paper is it has not pointed out the critical point. The logistics industry is all about competitiveness, the cost effectiveness, and also our operating costs. Just over the weekend, I visited Zhencheng with the sector. People were very interested with rice produced in Zhencheng. So they can scan the QR code with their mobile phone, and the order will be delivered to your home. The problem is we still face how to break through cross-boundary logistics services, how we can lower the cost, and how we can offer more facilitation in customs clearance. To develop modern logistics industry, we have to address these details. We look forward to more guidance in the future direction of development so that the sector can discuss together. I appreciate that there are challenges, but we look forward to people in the Bureau that really know the operation of the sector so that the government and the sector can work together and find the best way for further development. I'd like to hear from the Bureau on how we can further promote cross-boundary logistics services. What is the government's thinking? Thank you, Mr. Yu, for your views. You have pointed out 2 important things. First, e-commerce is going to bring us tremendous business opportunities. And secondly, as the industry develops, there will be cross-sectoral issues. So one of our 4 major areas is to promote cross-sectoral coordination. We will not stop at just publishing the action plan. Rather, the action plan would tell us the direction for our future work. Cross-sectoral coordination is one of the areas we have to work on. We are now trying to set up a suitable mechanism to strengthen cross-sectoral coordination, because we do understand that while we resolve an issue today, there can be a new issue tomorrow. We understand that the industry is developing by leaps and bounds, and there will be always new issues emerging. Now, I am the last speaker on this topic. Since we have overrun for 15 minutes, we can have a second round.
I have some comments and I have some questions. Now, I see that this is an action plan, but I don't see a framework for the purpose of analysis. Say for the logistics industry, we have land, sea, transport, and aviation. How do you break them down into smaller categories? Say when it comes to competitiveness, is it where does our edge lie? Is it because we are very efficient? We don't need to do the computation. What area do we enjoy the competitive edge? Because when it comes to long-term development, do you have targets? Say we must not be more costly than the Singapore industry, the industry in Singapore. What is our target? What is the target business turnover? About the application of innovation technology, can you give me the details? SWOT analysis. You consulted the industry, but it seems that many comments made by members are not included, such as, say, cross-sectoral coordination. This could be a weakness. We need to face up to our weaknesses. We need to lay out all the weaknesses so that we tackle them together, so that we make a joint effort to build a good blueprint. There should be indicators, numbers as our targets so that we can map our way forward. So that's about the framework and the use of SWOT analysis so that we target the right categories and translate words into action. So that's my view. Your comment? Now, we've conducted a study, but we've only provided the salient points in the PowerPoint and in the paper. We draw up the 4 major areas for enhancement. The action plan to be published will contain more details, be it the SWOT analysis and the way forward will provide more details. Right, so when the action plan is published, you should set up a meeting with us as quickly as possible so that we can relay the views of the industry to you. Thank you. We are 16 minutes behind schedule. We need to move on to the next item. Item 4, report on the work of the Competition Commission. CB bracket 4620/2023 bracket 04 and 05. These are the 2 papers. Let's invite the administration and representatives of the Competition Commission to come in. Members, if you want to speak, please press the request to speak button. From the CDB, we have Mr. Joey Tang, Principal Assistant Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. From the Competition Commission, we have Mr. Samuel Chan, Mr. Russell Butt, Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Patrick Kwok, Executive Director. Let me read out the list of members. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Mr. Michael Luk, Dr. Chow Man-kwong, Mr. Stephen Ho, Mr. Frankie Yik, Dr. So Chang-wing, Ms. Eunice Yong, and Mr. Andrew Lam. I will invite the administration and the representatives of the Competition Commission to walk us through the paper. Chairman, members, good afternoon. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to lead this team of colleagues with Mr. Samuel Chan, Chairman, and Mr. Russell Butt, CEO of the Competition Commission, to brief members on the work of the Competition Commission. Last year, when I attended the LegCo meeting, I shared with members the work of the Competition Commission in the subsequent year. There are 3 highlights. Cases affecting the underprivileged and people's livelihood, cases involving the taking of advantage of government subsidies or public funding, and cases impacting digital markets. These are the 3 priority areas in terms of enforcement. In the past year, we brought 3 cases before the Competition Tribunal. And we also dealt with another case by non-litigation means. So these are the three salient points I'd like to make, and I'll defer to the Competition Commission to say more in a moment. Apart from enforcement, we also attach importance to public sector engagement. That means publicity. You may have noticed a series of publicity and promotional events. Last year, the mainland authorities revised the anti-competition law. This is a very important exercise, and since then we have been stepping up liaison with the counterparts in the mainland, and we've also organized a seminar. We invited the academics and government officials from the mainland to attend this webinar. The webinar was attended by lawyers, academics, business representatives, and representatives from the public sector. We'll continue to enhance public education so that business enterprises will know more about the mainland's anti-monopoly law. Meanwhile, the Competition Commission is also strengthening exchanges and meetings with competition agencies from mainland and overseas, and we will organize the 2023 Competition Enforcers and Academic Summit in August. We will bring together scholars and enforcers from the mainland and the region so that we can tell good stories of Hong Kong. As for our way forward, the Competition Commission will continue to fulfill the various functions as set out in the Competition Ordinance to promote a level playing field in Hong Kong and so as to benefit different sectors of the community, of the economy. I'll now defer to my colleague to say more about the work of the Competition Commission in the previous year. Thank you, Chairman members. The Chairman just highlighted the three major areas of enforcement and also our initiatives in terms of policy, advisory, and public sector engagement. We will focus on the three major strategies in the coming year. First, we will step up collaboration with different agencies. The Competition Commission has been in close liaison with government departments and institutions to give advice on the competition matters. In terms of government procurement and government subsidy schemes, the relevant government departments and institutions may be the victims of bid-rigging, price fixing, and other anti-competitive conduct. So we have been in liaison with these government departments, and especially in the procurement process, we have given advice to the departments and provided training to the relevant personnel. As for competition-related offenses, sometimes the case may involve other criminal offenses, and as such, we work with other law enforcement agencies so as to effectively combat the unlawful conduct. The second strategy is on policy advisory and public sector engagement. In the beginning of the work of the Commission, we took a complaint-led approach, but in recent years we have taken a more proactive approach to investigate into cases relating to people's livelihood. We adopted a special analysis to look into a particular case, the D-BIS scheme. As for public sector engagement, we also mount publicity in public education. For example, we just held an activity relating to collusive pricing. Last year, we rolled out the first docudrama called Compete Cartel Hunters. That docudrama yielded quite good publicity results. And we also deal with some cases with non-litigation remedies. litigation is one means of combating anti-competitive conduct, but this is not the only means. When circumstances are appropriate, we adopt different approaches in resolving cases. For example, we accept commitments from the companies or entities concerned. Where circumstances are appropriate, we also resort to other efficient means of settling cases apart from taking them to the court. For example, earlier, in relation to air conditioning works, we reached agreement with some of the parties concerned. These parties took the plea and admitted their liability and accepted the pecuniary penalties. And Mr. Patrick Kwok in a moment will say more about our enforcement work. Chairman members, in the past year, the Competition Commission conducted initial assessment on 10 new cases and launched investigation on 5 new cases. One of these cases involved the Aberdeen wholesale fish market. Some of the practitioners were engaged in price fixing, collusive pricing, and in November, December, and last week we had a joint operation with the police. We conducted the search and investigation together. In relation to cases brought to the Competition Tribunal, so far 3 cases have been brought to the tribunal. The first case relates to resale price maintenance. The undertaking imposed minimum resale prices on 2 main local distributors for the sale of MSG powder. For the second case, in the tendering process, serious bid rigging was involved. The third case involved the second set of proceedings against 2 undertakings for suspected price fixing, market sharing, and bid rigging in relation to the supply of air conditioning works. As mentioned by Mr. Butt, we reached an agreement with some of the parties in the proceedings. As for non-litigation remedies, in the past year, we came across one case in relation to commitments offered by 7 car distributors, resulting in the complete removal of car warranty restrictions previously imposed on the car owners of 17 passenger car brands. In the beginning of this year, you may have noticed that commitments were offered by 2 leading online food delivery platforms. We've just concluded the consultation. We're considering the views before drawing up a decision. We also published an advisory document on employment related matters, and there is also a leniency policy for individuals, and also the revised set of model non-collusion clauses. 8 members would like to speak. As I am reading the list, I will give each member 4 minutes for a start. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of prosecution, enforcement, and also promotion, the Competitive Commission has done quite well last year. For instance, for cases brought to the tribunal, there was the first case involving a distance business program. It was abuse of government funds. I'm pleased to see that the Commission has cracked down on the abuse of government subsidies. Now, there are many similar subsidy schemes and tendering programs of the government. I'd like to know how the Commission is going to share this experience with government departments, so that there can be tightened awareness in the operation of subsidy schemes to detect anti-competition practices and to report to the Commission. And then you have also prepared that docudrama, Compete Cartel Hunters. I watched the episodes and it was really of high quality. And you are going to launch an educational program for secondary schools. Is very good because you can enhance secondary students' understanding of this program, and you have attracted close to 15,000 students from 170 schools to take part. There are 150 odd 400 and close to 150,000 students, and you've only covered about 1/10 of the secondary school students, and there is room for further improvement. Have you reviewed the reasons why participation from schools have been low and how you can boost the participation of secondary school students? Thank you. I thank Mr. Chan for his recognition of our work. I will defer to Mr. Kwok to take this question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your recognition for our work. The first question is about government subsidy schemes. Government departments and public bodies have also got procurement exercises. Sometimes they may become targets of unscrupulous elements. They can be victims of antitrust behavior. We're very close liaison with government departments and public bodies. From time to time, we receive requests from them as to how we can help them to enhance their procurement procedures to guard against antitrust conduct. Now, we attach importance to this. As regards the case involving the subsidies for distance business scheme, if not for information from the Hong Kong Productivity Council for us to investigate, we could not have been successful. So we'll continue to cooperate with government departments. And of course, we have to assist these departments that in their procurement process, there are signs suggesting antitrust behavior. We will continue to do this, and we do provide guidelines for departments. We will continue to do this. Very quickly, I come to the second question, and that is how we use our docudrama to enhance the awareness of the ordinance to secondary school students. Of course, we cannot cover all secondary schools in the first stage, but that is a starting point, and we will continue with our work. We have to understand that schools have a heavy curriculum, and they have other extracurricular activities. So we have to use opportunities to disseminate this message to students. We will continue to cooperate with the Education Bureau. Very quickly, I think you should first work on teachers. After all, through liberal studies and the contact of students, at least they can help students to have a good understanding of the ordinance. Thank you. Mr. Luk Chung Hong. Thank you. Since the commencement of the ordinance in 2015, it's been 8 years. Many members of the public could suspected that there were antitrust behavior, but there could not be successful prosecution because of lack of evidence. For instance, the suppliers to supermarkets and also a bundling of various tenancy agreements, bullying the smaller enterprises, and also oil prices. There seems to be price fixing among oil companies. One of the roles and functions of the Commission is to investigate antitrust behavior, but under the ordinance, you can only require undertakings and employees to produce information when you have reasonable cause to suspect. As a result, it's very difficult for the Commission to prove antitrust behavior. You're only able to catch the small undertakings. You cannot really crack down the larger culprits. In countries and places with antitrust law, they can penalize those offending undertakings hundreds of millions of dollars. As mentioned, the country has introduced a new version of anti-competition law. I'd like to ask the Commission whether there is any proposal to amend the competition ordinance to enhance the powers of the Commission to boost their enforcement ability. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. There are a few questions. I'll try to answer some of them, and I will invite my colleagues to supplement. How do we compare with other jurisdictions? Do we have enough teeth in our ordinance? Are we able to catch the large undertakings? Now, we have heard such comments for a long time. I have participated in the work of the Commission for quite a while, and I fail to see how we can't tackle the bigger offenders. Let me give you some example. In the past few years, we have taken enforcement action by bringing cases to the tribunal and by non-mitigation causes too. We have tackled multinational companies. We have tackled container terminal operators, and we have tackled undertakings quite famous. So we will give no regard to the size of the undertakings. So long as there is antitrust behavior, we will enforce the law. Mr. Lok mentioned the issue of oil prices. We have said previously that we have started investigation, and since we are doing it, we cannot disclose details. We will continue to work on it. And by and large, powers available to us are sufficient. For instance, for anti-trust behavior and price rigging, etc., our powers are by and large similar to that of our counterparts. I don't know whether the CEO has anything to add. Please be brief. Thank you. We have got three major focuses. First, things related to livelihood issues. Anything that impacts on people's livelihood will receive our attention if there is any anti-competition behavior. But then to establish a case, we must have reasonable cause to suspect before we can start investigation. Our strategy has changed a little bit. We act on complaints, and we also take the initiative to initiate our own investigations. We also appeal people in the trade to provide information for us to assist us to achieve to attain the reasonable cause to suspect threshold, which is by no means a low threshold. We need assistance from the community before we can start our investigation. Thank you. Dr. Chow Meng Kwong. Thank you, Chair. Investigation of antitrust behavior is a very complicated task. We have seen some results. They have penalized or imposed pecuniary penalty to a certain extent. For instance, for large enterprises that have purchased large shopping malls from the housing department. Now, we have not seen major operations. I'd like to know the number of cases you have acted on based on the second conduct rule. Many countries, including our own country, are now analyzing cases from the economic perspective. In larger cases, they engage overseas academics that specialize in economic activities to help analyze. I'd like to know whether you do the same and what is the size of this department and whether it is sufficient for your investigation. Do you have enough academics in Hong Kong to support your work? I understand that the size is limited. Have you ever sought assistance overseas? Thank you. Chairman of the Commission. Thank you, Dr. Chow, for your questions. Regarding the second conduct rule and the number of cases initiated under that. As mentioned, a few years back, we had the first case of second conduct rule, and that is abuse of dominance. It involves a health care group, and we brought the case to the tribunal. We talk about case management, conferences and hearings and trials. Now they are in progress. And as for cases involving as the second conduct rule, whether we have enough academics locally to help. Now, as mentioned, we have our own department. I defer to the CEO to comment on our manpower capacity. Thank you. As mentioned, we have to carry out a lot of economic analysis in investigation. This is particularly so for second conduct rule cases. Economic analysis is most important. Whether we have such experts in Hong Kong, the answer is no. I believe the Commission has already monopolized the area of economic analysis. We have got all the talents with us in Hong Kong. In the respective department, we have got 3 colleagues. They have experience of economic analysis overseas. In addition to these 3 colleagues, where necessary, we can employ economists from outside the Commission to assist our economic analysis. Under the ordinance, we have the first conduct rule as well as the second conduct rule. So a first conduct rule is about a collusion, and we do not require a lot of economic analysis for the first conduct rule cases, but more so in the second conduct rule case.
Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chairman. First, I thank the Competition Commission for their work over the years. Competition ordinance is something new in Hong Kong. So the Competition Commission should step up publicity. In many instances, because of lack of knowledge, members of the public have been caught by the law. Now, another member talked about oil prices. This is frequently talked about, but it is also puzzling why, despite all the talk, the Competition Commission is unable to tackle the problem. There are also other anti-competitive conduct trying to monopolize the business, and this is more prevalent in new markets such as food delivery, as we have seen recently. There are also problems relating to the tendering process, leading to bid rigging. Many smaller players are forced to engage in collusive bid rigging conduct. Perhaps the Competition Commission should discuss with the SAR government on improving the tendering process. For example, Mr. Yik and myself have been following up on some cases involving the tendering of pier operations. Now, we're talking about very large investments and long horizon. And very often you will hear about arrangements not so that other parties will not bid for your space. For cleaning services, there is another issue. We want to go depart from the lowest bidder wins principle. So it's really difficult to draw the line. There is a gray area here. How does the Competition Commission advise the government? Is there a dedicated unit to advise the government on different aspects? Say, for certain tendering exercises, you should refrain from letting the lowest bidder win. Say, in the situation of a market, the practice may be reasonable, but if it's open tendering, you always get the lowest bidder, but you may not be able to secure the best service for the public. I'd like to have the Commission's view. Mr. Chan, thank you. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Ho, for your comments. Tendering is an issue close to our heart, and there are many problems stemming from tendering. Apart from the examples given by Mr. Ho, on other occasions, I've been told by others that because we need a certain number of bidders, now some of the bidders are not really interested in bidding. They're just here to make up for the number. And does this constitute bid rigging? So for government contracts, is it possible to adopt another mode? The Competition Commission is the enforcement agency of the competition ordinance. It's difficult to advise the government on whether open tendering should be conducted or whether the contract should be awarded directly to any party. It is not our position to advise the government on these matters, but we do take action when we detect antitrust conduct. And we have given priority to certain areas such as anti-competitive conduct affecting livelihood, cartels taking advantage of government subsidies, that is an abuse of the public coffers. So, say for a cleaning contract, we consider whether this affects livelihood, or say for the DBIZ scheme, we consider whether this is taking advantage of government subsidies in a deceptive manner. as to whether the case involved bid rigging, more discussion is needed. In other words, the Competition Commission does not have the means to do so. So this is for the administration. We don't want the anti-competition law to affect competitiveness of Hong Kong, say for the peer operation. You have not considered the competitiveness. If pricing is too high, this is another kind of monopoly. So this will eat into our competitiveness. The administration should bear this in mind. We have the representatives from the CEDB. I think he's heard you. Next, Mr. Frankie Yick. The Competition Commission previously took a passive approach. Now it's taken a more active approach and moving away from the complaint-led approach. I appreciate that, Mr. Butt. You may recall that on a number of occasions we discussed the oil prices in Hong Kong. I'm happy to read in paragraph 10 that you've taken a proactive approach to investigate into cases involving energy resources. Of course, you can't tell us exactly which entity you're targeting in your investigation, but I'd be happy to know more about what the situation you have identified in the energy market. And I also agree with Mr. Chan Siu Hong. We need to work on education. We need to educate our next generation about anti-competitive conduct. If this is more extensively known, then when our next generation joins the workforce, they will be proactive in identifying and reporting anti-competitive conduct as well. We should put more resources into educating secondary school students, in other words. Who will take the question, please, Chairman, or? Yes, thank you, Chairman. I thank the member for his appreciation. We do have a case relating to fuel, but this case is in the process of investigation. I'm afraid I cannot give you more details, especially when we have invoked the statutory power to demand more information to be provided. So I'm afraid I am not in a position to divulge any details. But when time is right, we will report to members. About secondary schools, your comment is whether we can step up public education. Of course, this can be done. Just a quick follow-up, Chairman. A few years back when we started to discuss oil prices, the Competition Commission commented that they did not have the means to start the investigation. I'm happy to learn that you have launched the investigation. So just to supplement very briefly, since members are interested in this case, I'm sorry I cannot disclose details of the investigation. But I can acknowledge this fact that this is an issue close to everyone's heart. I'm a driver, and just a half tank of fuel cost me $1,000. Apart from fluctuation in international oil prices and the fuel tax at $6.06 per liter, government policy and other factors. In fact, in 2021, on the same occasion, the administration, and that is the Environment Bureau, put forward a number of reasons, such as the government's transportation policy and the carbon emission reduction strategy, and that the government does not intend to suppress oil prices. Now, so this is to show that there are many factors at play affecting oil prices. But as the law enforcement agency responsible for enforcing the competition ordinance, we will spare no effort in conducting the relevant investigation. Next, Dr. So Chang-ming. Thank you, Chairman. I'm reading from the paper. The competition ordinance took effect in 2015 in December, and since then you have been regularly reporting to the Council on the implementation of the ordinance. However, the paper is silent on whether a review has been conducted on the ordinance, whether there is any need to improve this piece of legislation. It's been 8 years since 2015. There have been a lot of changes in terms of market conduct. On the 1st of August last year, our country revised the anti-monopoly law. Before the revision, there was no clear definition on certain monopolizing conduct. I don't know whether you've noticed that there was this offense called disorderly expansion of capital. We have the rule of law in Hong Kong, and yet, according to what you said just now, you're unable to tackle certain acts, and sometimes cases are resolved through non-litigation remedies. I don't know whether this has any deterrence. The law is supposed to be in black and white. If the competition ordinance is not updated and amended to catch up with the times, then of course the Commission will have a hard time fulfilling its functions. And I fully support enhancing publicity in schools. But I have this suggestion. Perhaps you should revise the use of this word. In Chinese, 合謀 or collusion, at least in Chinese, it has a neutral connotation. But I think it's misleading if you use it in the title of an unlawful act. So this is a point for you to consider in your future publicity effort. I thank Dr. So for his question and comments. Now, is there a need to amend the ordinance? The member correctly pointed out that in June last year, the NPCSC endorsed a major revision to the anti-monopoly law in the PRC. And as I said in my opening remarks, in light of the amendment in the anti-monopoly law in the PRC, we step up liaison with the relevant authorities. In fact, the anti-monopoly law in China took effect in 2008, long before the competition ordinance in Hong Kong took effect. What we do is that we target anti-competitive conduct, that is in relation to the first conduct rule, and also abuse of the market power, that is the second conduct rule. Comparing to other jurisdictions, we do have sufficient power as a law enforcement agency. We even have the power to collect evidence. To give you an example, now after we get hold of a mobile phone, we are given powers under the law to handle the phone in certain ways. And we'll continue to liaise with the government, the Legislative Council, academics, and different sectors so as to make improvements.
Just a few more words. You keep stressing how strong your enforcement is. The question is whether the ordinance should be further improved. At the company, the community, and also the business operators should also have a checklist of proper behavior so that they will know whether they have contravened the law. Now, if all of a sudden you fine a certain undertaking for hundreds of millions of dollars, well, the undertaking might not know what it has done wrong in the first place. Now, from the government's perspective on whether there is room for the ordinance to be reviewed, the ordinance has been in place for about 8 years. The Commission is a relatively young organization. While it has only got 8 years of history, the Commission keeps reviewing its strategies. Bringing cases to the tribunal aside, Mr. So would like to know whether non-litigation remedies are useful. The answer is yes. Take food delivery platforms as example. While we have yet to complete the consultation, the community is concerned about the outcome. So people who of certain standing in the market will understand that the Commission can use non-mitigation means to address anti-competition concerns, and there can be knock-on effect on consumers and other industries. This goes to show that the work of the Commission is evolving. The Commerce and Economic Development is responsible for monitoring the work of the Commission. We maintain liaison with the Commission. We exchange views on various issues. They have achieved something in a short period of 8 years. We will continue to keep in view our own development and development of anti-competition laws in other jurisdictions. Thank you. Ms. Eunice Yong, I'd like to say I actually recognize the work of the Commission. I have watched all the episodes of the docudrama Compete Cartel Hunters. It has enabled the audience to understand what constitutes anti-competition and what is collusion. And you have also acted on a number of cases. Since December 2015, you have initial assessment commenced for 251 cases and investigation commenced 54 cases. The figures are quite high. When it comes to the gathering of evidence and asking people to come forward to give evidence, what difficulties do you face? According to Paragraph 11, you are investigating cases involving oil and energy resources, property management, food, etc. I have submitted oral questions on prices of food. I wonder if there is any price fixing involving undertakings. I understand that the Commission is still investigating some of the cases. I believe members of the public are concerned about prices, including that of oil. Now, people are saying that after so many years, you still fail to address the suspected oil rigging of oil prices. So how can you deal with that? I thank Ms. Yong for her commendation for our publicity. Do we have difficulties in gathering evidence? I defer to our Executive Director, Mr. Kwok. Thank you, Chairman and members of the panel. We will follow up very seriously on each and every complaint we receive. We have to carry out initial assessment. We might have received many complaints and referrals, but some of them may not fall under the purview of the Commission. It would be ultra-virus for us to deal with them, and so these cases will be referred to other organizations. For some of the cases, they may be minor in nature. Having regard to our priorities, we may not use our resources to tackle these cases, and we will explain to complainants our justifications. We must have prima facie before we can start our initial investigation. For some cases, we may not be able to proceed when we come to a certain point. For instance, we cannot verify the information received. Sometimes we can't confirm whether antitrust behavior has taken place, but we will use our resources and manpower to identify or find out all the evidence needed. For some cases, it took us very long to investigate because a large volume of documents were involved. We had to invite many witnesses to give evidence. That's time-consuming. There may be cases where we could not still confirm a reasonable cause to suspect, and we have to give up. Anyway, we will improve our procedures. Hopefully, we can deal with each and every case properly, whether by means of litigation or non-litigation means. We will ensure that we continue to have our competitive environment. Ms. Andrew Lam, by public education and publicity, we can promote fair competition in community. The result is obvious, and I hope the Commission can keep up with this approach. I have two specific questions. I think Mr. Stephen Ho has pointed out a very valid point. With development in information and technology, there is bound to be natural monopoly in the course of development. I'd like to know whether the Commission has got any initial observations or regular monitoring. I'm not talking about a particular sector, because the use of technology happens in all sectors. And the second question is about non-litigation remedies. And the question is about whether we should use punishment or other means to promote fair competition. The public would like to know the rationale behind your decision, whether to use litigation or non-litigation means. I will take the first question, and I will defer to my colleague for the second. Yes, with wider use of technology, the scenario referred to by Mr. Lam may happen, and that is natural monopoly. This is not just a question for the Commission in Hong Kong. In other places, they are also concerned about this. For instance, the use of AI. Would that lead to antitrust behavior? In many international conferences and seminars, this is a hot topic. As I said, as society resumes normalcy and as cross-boundary travel resumes, we have to enhance exchange and interaction with our counterparts in different jurisdictions to understand the latest development and what we can do locally. We may tender advice or suggestions to the Policy Bureau, and we can also use such information to remind undertakings to ensure that they will not engage in antitrust behavior. But this is a rather new and rapidly developing topic. We are happy and have actually spent a lot of time to follow up. You might have noticed that we have recently got a case involving food delivery platforms. This is because the two platforms account for 90% of the market share. These two large food delivery platforms have given us a commitment after our consultation. That commitment will cause them to remove some of their clauses and conditions of service, so that for a new entrants and smaller online food delivery platform, they can also join the market. And these terms and conditions will only disapply when a new food delivery platform has reached a certain scale. And because these platforms can easily, very quickly gain market influence, and we will focus on these issues. Whether we should bring a case to the tribunal or use non-litigation remedies, which one is more effective? The Commission has our established policies to find the most suitable approach to tackle a case. We will consider the gravity of the case, the duration of contravention, etc. Our ultimate target for each and every case is litigation. We are not saying that for all cases we should use settlement to come to an early conclusion. But for all the cases, we have to look at the evidence available, the attitude of the persons concerned, whether they're willing to change their attitude and be cooperative. We have various mechanisms to assist our defendants. For instance, we have a lenient policy. We've also got a cooperation and settlement policy. If the respondent is willing to cooperate, that means they are remorseful about their antitrust behavior. We think that sometimes a more effective and effective way of dealing with a case is by non-litigation remedies. But this is not our approach by default. We actually want to bring all cases to the tribunal. The outcome may appear to be more effective and convenient to members of the public, so that customers can get a better deal, can have access to better goods and services because of a fair market. This is what we want to achieve. Thank you. We end the discussion of this item. I'd like to thank the administration and also the Competition Commission. AOB, we don't have any. All right. I'd like to remind members that the Airport Authority has invited us to go to our Hong Kong IA for a visit on the 11th of July from 9 a.m. to noon. All members are encouraged to take part. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.